Good morning. It's Monday, June the 30th, and we're going to have bringing you the buzz entitled Stopping at the Bar 2025. We've stopped by Bob's Bar a couple times previously in the past 10 years of doing the buzz, but it's the first time we've done it in 2025. Like all bars, sports talk and beer rule at all bars. Let's listen in as the usual guys are at their spots and others will be arriving shortly. Bart, by his smaller stature, one could almost guess that he was a computer tech guy. Surprisingly, he was an early arrival on this particular day, and he was at the bar enjoying his second beer of the day. With him was his friend Frank, who was a wide-shouldered big man who always seemed to be at the bar in his regular seat, the corner seat. They were talking sports, but Bart was doing almost all the talking. With his regular job, Frank didn't do much talking, so sports was his thing. We could hear him. Sure, it's a rebuild. Oh, crap. What was Mo's word? It's a reset. Yeah, who's he kidding? We'll be doing this reset for 5 years, probably. Bart was now starting to get kind of worked up over this because he lived and died every single day with the Cards. Bart continued. Then by that 5-year mark, some of the players, if they're still here, which is questionable in itself, they'll be shipped out. Frank sat still, looking right at Bart. He kept shaking his head in agreement, but really only half listening to him. He'd heard this song before and heard it many times. In fact, over the last 6 months, the moaning about the Cardinals had really gone on and on and on. But he didn't say a word. He was tired of it as he concentrated more on the TV than discussion. Then after a big gulp of his Budweiser, Frank looked right at Bart. Eye to eye. Slow down there, big boy. What's new here? Not a thing. We could see it all coming. They cut their payroll by moving players on the edge of free agency over the last several years, and they haven't reached for their wallet for quite a while. Colt Wong entered free agency in 2021 to sign with the Brewers. Harrison Bader was traded in 2022. Jack Flaherty and Paul DeJong were traded at the 23 deadline. All were on the cusp of free agency. Some others were simply sent into free agency without a peep, the players that they couldn't get anything for. Bart, though, jumped right back in. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. He said in a very loud voice as many guys in the bar turned and looked at him. A sudden yet deafening quiet then came over the bar. Something that didn't happen too often. A person shouting in the bar was unusual enough, real unusual. So it stunned everyone. Most just took another gulp of their beer and stayed quiet. But Frank took the lead. These owners are the DeWitts. You know, they've owned or held significant ownership stakes in several baseball teams. Started with the St. Louis Browns way back in the 40s. Then the Cincinnati Reds, the Baltimore Orioles, Texas Rangers, and now the St. Louis Cardinals. They've owned all of them. The old man, Bill DeWitt Sr., has even owned the St. Louis Browns. Then he moved them to Baltimore. And he owned the Cincinnati Reds. Now, Bill DeWitt Jr. was the minority owner of the Baltimore Orioles and Texas Rangers before acquiring the St. Louis Cardinals in 1995. It's in their blood, partially laughing, in their wallets. Were any of those teams better when he left than when he arrived? You all know the answer. Move on, Bart. Billy and Arnold were bouncing in through the side door as that conversation was closing down. It was just in time. Some new voices were really needed at the bar to change the topics, and Billy and Arnold would stir it up. They were the newest members of this particular drinking group. Billy always seemed to have a smile on his face. He shouts out, "How's everyone today? Another day behind us. Now, we're not still hammering the Cardinals, are we? I'm tired of it. Let's move on. Some hockey, man." As he finished that sentence, Billy moved towards the barkeeper and ordered his first drink. It was a hard seltzer, the current trend of the younger guys, and Billy fit right in. Instantly, the barkeeper dug deep into the cooler and brought out one of his newest brands. Billy now had the attention of the boys. No one else drank a seltzer. So he looked around to get eye contact, and everyone then blurted out, "Any more seltzers?" Sure enough, Bart responded while smiling, "You still sucking up that half beer, half whatever it is?" Billy, a bit on the shy side, sensed it was his time to speak up. "Well, did any of you guys see it? The NHL is really raising its payroll." Arnold's favorite sport was hockey, so he often led discussions into hockey for his own liking. Then he blurts out, "Yes, the NHL is planning to significantly expand their spending for the 2025-26 season. The NHL's team salary cap will jump from $88 million, which it was in 24-25, all the way up to $95.5 million in 25-26 season. That's an 8.5% jump. That's a big jump, but it's still under control. It's not like the MLB, Dodgers, Yankees in their own league and spending, and everybody else is in a different level. Of course, the Blues aren't going to come close to the maximum, but his voice was starting to get excited. How fair is that?" Bart, who knew where he was going, jumped right in. "Yeah, Arnold, you're right, to a point. I mean, how much money can they charge for a ticket? It's already sky high." But then, hockey fans are, like you, kind of crazy, as he smiled and raised his beer towards Arnold. "Here's to you, big boy. Keep rooting for those Blues." Charlie, who had just walked in and was trying to assess the situation, came over and said, "I'm with Arnold. The Blues surprised everyone last year by winning one stinking playoff round. Their core of good young players is getting experience and growing. Last year, some of those young guys were pretty good. Guys like Jake Neighbors, and he's my favorite, Zach Bolduc, Dylan Holloway, they both had a terrific series against the Winnipeg Jets. Then there's Dvorsky, this Dvorsky kid, and what was the name of that number one pick? That's it, Snuggerud, Jimmy Snuggerud. That Snuggerud kid actually scored a goal in the playoffs." Billy chipped right in. "Yeah, man, he didn't look intimidated at all. He might even work his way into the top line this year." Suddenly, from the end of the bar, Frank piped up. "Yeah, that was a good series, but the Blues have only won one postseason round since they won it all, the Stanley Cup in 2019. That seemed to stun everyone. Or they were real thirsty, as it was suddenly very quiet in the bar as they all took a big gulp or two of beer. Then, not 2 minutes later, Charlie, who had just settled down at the end of the bar, was listening to the banter. He had been through a tough day. At least to his eyes, it was a tough day. It was hot, really hot. And he was out there working on constructing a new house. Then Charlie holds up one finger as he looked right at the bartender. Immediately, Eddie, the bartender, shook his head yes and fixed him up a glass of draft beer. Leave it to Billy to move on. Billy, still beaming, looked around the whole group, of which most were drinking from their beer glass and almost ignoring him. "Hey, man, let's talk some football. Our Tigers will be good, probably really good." Bart shook his head up and down. Frank was still sipping his beer, while Arnold just looked straight ahead. Looked like he was processing the info. Sometimes that took him a little while. Finally, Arnold, after his gulp, said, "I don't want to pop your bubble, big boy, but Mizzou will be okay, but nothing's real special." All of a sudden, everybody turned and looked right at Arnold. Some were stunned, and Arnold wasn't all in on Mizzou. After a round of groans, shaking hands, or just gulps, Arnold continued in the spotlight. Mizzou was seated number 9 in the SEC. That's no big shakes, man. Number 9. Arnold was on a roll. He felt it. And they lost their quarterback, Brady Cook. I mean, that guy was good, especially in coming back from behind. He led the Tigers to all kinds of comeback wins. Can't count on that with the new guy. Man, how would you forget that great comeback against Auburn last year? Mizzou was 10-1 in one-score games in the 2023-24 seasons, and that's in large part due to him at quarterback. I say it again, the guy was really good, and we're going to miss him. He got signed Didn't get drafted, but got signed by the Jets right after the draft. Arnold was getting louder and louder. Finally, the bartender looked at Frank. Frank got the hint. Hey, Arnold, simmer down, big boy. Why don't you buy all of us a beer? We'd probably listen to your Mizzou stuff a little bit better if we had a beer in front of us. If you do, put it on the spot, Arnold. Looked at the barkeeper. Hey, man, send us another round as he was reaching for his wallet. Meanwhile, not sold on Mizzou was Charlie, and he had his own thoughts on the Tigers. We'll see if that quarterback, Bo Pribula, that kid from Penn State, can really cut it as our first stringer. Some step up, and some just can't cut it in the SEC with the big plays or on the key third down situations when you really need a good quarterback. Just then the door opened, and much to the surprise of everybody, Walter shuffled into the bar. Walter hadn't been there for a while, and it surprised everybody. Walter was a favorite of most everyone, so they turned and, in their own way, said, "Hey, Walter, good to see you. Nice to have you here," yada, yada, yada. Walter approached the bar. "Yeah, it's been a while. You know, at my age, something's always breaking down in my body, but that modern medicine's really something. So here I am. Give me a shot in the bud," he said once he reached the bar. "Is that your modern medicine?" shouted out Billy as he was smiling. Charlie turned, looked, and Billy and shook his head up and down. All enjoyed the comment, and the reaction as all laughed at it. Walter, who was really a big basketball fan, chimed in. "Hey, how about that NBA draft? 3 of the first 6 players were all from Duke." Frank, sitting right at the bar, turned and said, "Looks like they're taking a pay cut with the pros, huh?" All giggled at that sarcasm, and yet the truth in the statement. Walter, unfazed by the laughs, continued. And Rutgers had 2 players drafted in the top 10. Bart, who'd been very quiet. "Yeah, Rutgers has some transformative ideals for their top recruits." Even Frank had a chuckle. "Yeah, they can call it whatever they want, but we all know that those kids are getting paid to play college basketball and college football. And they're getting paid more than we are. How about that?" Bart, looking at Walter, wanted to change the topic since he didn't know squat about the NBA anymore and very little about the NCAA men's basketball. So he started asking the guys about their families. A couple minutes later, quiet came over the bar. Then Frank stood up. "I gotta go, guys." With that, all the other guys finished their drink, mumbled a, "Yeah, I gotta go too," to each other, then headed to the door. They'd be back tomorrow in the same seats. Thanks to you for joining us at the bar for our 3rd time in our 10 years here of doing Prepcast, and your thoughts on any of the topics are always invited, even if you're not back at the bar.